Protecting intellectual property while working with us. The most exciting part of today's talks. I'm sure you're all thrilled, and you can't wait to hear what I have to say. Before I start, also inside your package, there's a little booklet here that we made, and it's in color, so you can read it. It covers most of the stuff that I'll be talking about today too. So it also has some contact information and stuff like that if you're more interested in hearing more from us, which I'm sure you will be, because we're awesome. Okay, so I will also be the only speaker so far to use cute cartoons, so that's a plus. So let's, for my scenario today, I'm using the word company, but for you guys and academics, don't feel left out. Substitute company for university or college or institution, whatever you want. But anyway, let's say you have some sort of problem that you want to have fixed in some kind of way, but you really don't know how to do it. But then you have an inkling, hey, maybe those guys at B&L can help us out. And, well, sometimes we can. So, as you've heard so far, we here at the CFN and also the rest of the lab have really good facilities. We have a lot of facilities, a lot of space, and we have the capabilities, smart people working for us, and so there will be the expertise that can probably help you out, hopefully. So how would you go about contacting us or talking with us? Well, and why would you want to do that? So you might have some questions about working with a government entity like B&L. And you might also be worried about keeping your information proprietary. And also what will happen with your generated IP once you talk to us and you work with us. So that's basically what I'll be talking about now. And that is, you don't need to worry. We're at least trying to have a streamlined and uncomplicated process to engage with us here at B&L. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And we have both non-proprietary and proprietary agreements available for use when you work with us. And you can obtain patent rights, of course, subject to certain retentions by the government or a government use license, which we'll get into too. So let's go back and you've heard from some of the speakers here and you've heard from Jay about the facilities here, so you want to contact someone. Well, we encourage you to find appropriate research people here at the lab, and you can contact them directly and start talking to them and talk about your project and what you want to have solved. Hopefully they can either direct you to the right people or they might be the right person if you're lucky. So we encourage that because they can help you understand the capabilities that we have and what kind of safety training issues you'll need to be concerned about and how much effort it is. So, for the people here who are with a company, probably you might be a little bit worried about, well, hey, I don't want to just talk to you guys at the lab because, you know, our stuff is important to us and we don't want to lose our intellectual property rights to this and we want to keep it confidential and within the company, or you know, when we share it with you, we don't want you to go blabber it off to other people. That's when you can request a non-disclosure agreement, and these non-disclosure agreements are for initial conversations only. So in the time period when you're talking to the lab or people at the lab, until you make some kind of agreement to actually do work, that's when we have these NDAs in place. One quick comment about the word confidential. You will see that we talk about proprietary agreements more than confidential agreements. We call your information that you come here, we call that proprietary information, not confidential information. As confidential is one of the, it's basically in a government entity, confidential information is classified. So your information might be important to you, but I don't think it'll actually damage national security if that information is leaked. So we use the word proprietary. So you might So if you ever send us a form where it says confidential information shall be labeled confidential, etc., we will change that to proprietary. Just a side note. If you want to obtain an NDA, you can ask your contact person that you're talking to at B&L, and they will come to us, and we will work with you and your legal department on generating a non-disclosure agreement. Or you can contact us directly. We have our contact information is in that pamphlet we just have in your pocket, or in the packet. So once we get an NDA, of course, all proprietary information is to be kept in confidence. So that means that we here at the lab will use the same level of care in treating your information as we would treat our own proprietary information. And also restrict access to the information to only people who should be working on the project. When it comes to proprietary or non-disclosure agreements, of course, we are a DOE-owned facility, so we might have to disclose the proprietary information to the DOE, but not to worry. There is a statute that prohibits the people at DOE to then further divulge any information that they will get from us, from you. So it'll still be proprietary to you. So you have these initial discussions, and you might have an NDA or not, depends on your comfort level. You have a project and you want to go forward. And what are the options and how do you do it? Well, we've already heard from Mike about a lot of these options here. I just need a little blurb here of the work for others, Kratos, ACT, and the user agreements. And what you see here is the level of company involvement. That's like how much hands-on effort will it require from you. And so work for others is a little less, did more of the work here. And then ACT can be all over the place. And with user agreements, you actually come to the lab and use the facilities, so it's more involved, I should think. So some of this stuff will be a little, you've already heard already about the work for others. Like Mike said, the sponsoring company is given the option of owning the IP generated. So it all depends on where the funding comes from, as Mike already said. So, and again, the lab will take a government use license, so the government can use it. And Kratos, again, as Mike already said, the IP is owned by the entity that owned it, so it can either be owned by the company or the lab, or it will be jointly owned. It all depends on who made the invention. And again, the company then owns the IP that it generated. Any IP that's generated by the lab, you can get an exclusive license to, depending on the use. And of course, again, government rights or the government use license will be retained. And then ACT, this is where Mike said that there's more flexibility. So there's a slightly different options there for who's owning the IP created under the agreement. And also the government use license can be negotiated to be a bit more narrow than the broad government use license. So it could be restricted to a research license only. It all depends on the negotiations, I guess. Okay, so user agreements. Now user agreements are created, and they were created to be uniform across the various national labs. So they are, compared to ACT at least, there's a lot less negotiation here. We have a template that we follow, and any changes to that template has to be agreed upon by the DOE. Or so any significant or any substantial changes has to be agreed upon by the DOE. So we can't change the user agreements that much. And when that happens, it'll add time. So it's just easier to go with it and accept there and then sign. So, and then of course, you're giving the option of owning the IP, again with your the government use license. For user agreements, we have two kinds. We have non-proprietary agreements, and they are lab-wide. So if you have a non-proprietary user agreement, you can go to any facility and use that as your user agreement. The proprietary user agreements are DOE user facility specific. So for the CFN, you would have to have a non-proprietary user agreement with the CFN. I also think if you want to do light source, you have to have a user-specific agreement with them too. So you'd probably need two non-proprietary user agreements. And you always need the non-proprietary. You have to also have the non-proprietary. Okay. Yeah, so you have to have a master agreement with BNL before you can have this, the proprietary user agreements with this, the facility-specific, the non-proprietary user agreement. So the non-proprietary user agreements, they cover research on any of the user facilities, as I said. Oh, okay. I was ahead of myself and they was like, okay, yeah. And yeah. So if you need, if you do both proprietary and non-proprietary, you need both agreements. And also, remember, if you have a proprietary user agreement, you also have to submit a statement that is generic or that you can divulge, or a non-proprietary paragraph that is public, I believe. And again, yeah, so we have here the agreements are intended to be consistent across the laboratories, so there's less room for negotiation unless DOE approves. And we have here the site. You can actually see the templates for the user agreements at this website. I also have that in the pamphlet. And it also lists the companies that have master user agreements, so you can find out if your company has it. And here, some more websites. I think we have that in the pamphlet as well. Okay, and this is our is the BNL-wide user agreement person, and then CFN has a what was it? The contact for CFN user agreements was
it's Grace.
Grace, yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, me and names. Sorry about that. Okay, and here are our contacts here in the legal group. So Doreen Price is the Chief IP Counsel, and I'm a patent attorney, and we have some staff specialists you can always contact with any questions. And that's it. If you have any questions.
So any questions for Lars?
Oh.
No questions? All right, so we'll press on. Thanks again, Lars. So the last presentation today will be by Grace Webster, who will talk specifically about the process of becoming a user at CFN. So you've seen sort of the overview of all the types of relationships that you could have with BNL, with Berkeley National Lab, or with the Center for Functional Nanomaterials specifically. We focused in on sponsored research types of relationships for user agreements, and now Grace will outline and step you through the general process of becoming a user of CFN.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be brief. I know everybody's probably starving by now. So I'm the user program administrator here at the CFN. You've heard this morning from Emilio and from Jay about the CFN, what we do here, and what capabilities and what instruments we have that are available to users. So I'm going to talk a little bit of how you can get your hands on these tools, how you can access the tools. So I'm going to talk about the different modes of user access, about our proposal process, about safety, which is really important here. We cannot emphasize that enough. How you can access the labs, and what your user responsibilities are, what we expect from you as users of the CFN. So there are 3 different modes of user access. The general user, which is the major mode of access here at the CFN. It can either be non-proprietary, which is free at no cost to you. You have access to these wonderful tools and to our staff's expertise at no cost. And the proprietary mode, which we charge full cost recovery. We also have what we call rapid access. I will talk a little bit about that in the next slide. And we have what we call partner users. These are individuals or groups that carry out research at the CFN, and then they enhance our capabilities here. So rapid access is for time-critical, high-impact type work. This is at the discretion of the CFN director, so he approves all of the rapid access proposals. And you have to provide justification as to why you need access to the tools right away. You can't say that I need to get there right away. You have an example of a good justification would be, I'm presenting a paper at a conference in 2 months, I need some data or I need some images that can support my paper, or I'm writing a proposal that's due to, let's say, NSF in a couple of months, and I need to get some data in order to give a meaningful proposal. So those are the kinds of justifications that we are looking for rapid access. I have to say that not all rapid access proposals get approved. It is also dependent on the availability of the tools that we have. Rapid access proposals are typically submitted outside of our fixed calls. We have fixed deadlines for general users. So you can see when they submit these rapid access proposals, some of the general user proposals have already been allocated or scheduled. So depending on the availability of the tools, and that's actually the first, it doesn't even go to Emilio for review. If the facility says we can't accommodate it, then it doesn't even go that far. So we encourage you to contact the facility first to make sure that those tools are available, so you don't waste your time submitting the proposal. It is a one-time privilege. Rapid access, you cannot submit rapid access proposals back to back. We do tell you when we approve your rapid access proposals that if you need to continue your time beyond the limited access that you're given, that you have to submit a general user proposal for external review. So that's the limitations on the rapid access. It just allows you to get in, and do your work. And if you need more time, you need to submit a general user proposal. So how do you go about submitting a proposal? We actually have an online proposal form. I provide the link here. You create an account and you fill out the form and then submit. After the submission, your proposals are reviewed internally here. We have to look to make sure that we actually have the resources that you're looking for, or that the work that you're planning or proposing to do can be done here. Once it passes the feasibility stage, then it goes out to an external review panel. We assign a minimum of 3 reviewers, and they review your proposals based on scientific merit. They give it a score from anywhere from 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest. Any proposals that get an average between 4 and 5 don't typically get time here. Okay. Allocation, that's when we notify you that your proposal has been accepted and that we've allocated some time. It is based on the recommendation of our proposal review panel. And then the scheduling is actually between the user and the facility. They will contact you, or they will ask you to contact them. We'll give you who your point of contact is when we notify you about your allocation. And we'll give you the contact information so that you can call them to schedule your time. Okay? Now these are the deadline dates for our proposal submission. We typically have the deadline 3 months before the cycle actually starts. We have 3 different cycles throughout the year. Once your proposal is accepted, it is valid for 2 years or 6 consecutive cycles. So the deadline, if you're requesting additional time, is different than when you're submitting a new proposal. These are all on our website, by the way. So this is the ratings guidelines that our panel go by. Later this afternoon, Jay is going to talk about some recommendations on how to write an effective proposal so that you have a better chance of scoring high and get time. Our acceptance rate here at the CFN is still high, but as Emilia pointed out this morning, our projects are getting bigger and bigger. There are more proposals that are being submitted, so the competition is getting higher.
So what is the rate of acceptance roughly these days?
It's still high. It's right around the 90%. Yeah. So safety, safety, safety. We can't emphasize safety enough. So for each proposal, you are required to submit what we call a safety approval form, where you identify the chemicals that you're going to be using, the materials that you're going to be bringing, and our safety coordinators will review those safety approval forms to make sure that we can accommodate those chemicals and materials, or that we have the proper controls for them. We also have to make sure that whatever waste is produced by your experiment, we can dispose of them appropriately. For any experiments that present unusual risk, we recommend that you contact our safety coordinator, who is Bob Sabatini, so that he can ensure that there are proper controls in place, or that he can make recommendations, maybe change the chemicals or materials that may be similar that you can use for your project if the initial materials or chemicals that you're planning to bring we can't accommodate. For some experiments, they may require a safety review. Like, for example, if you're bringing biological materials, they can take, several months to complete, depending on what type of biological materials you're bringing. And once your SAF is approved, it's valid for 1 year. So in the course of a proposal lifetime, you may submit 2 SAFs. Okay? So your proposal is approved. What do you do next? So in order for you to work here at Brookhaven, you have to have a valid guest appointment. So you have to submit or complete a guest registration form. And it's during this process that Brookhaven ensures or checks that your institution has a user agreement in place. Your guest registration will not be approved until that user agreement is received by the Guest User Visitor Center. So once they get that, then they'll push through with approving your guest registration. Nowadays, guest registrations are typically approved within a week. It doesn't take long as it used to be. So it's more important that we make sure that you have your user agreements in place. Training courses. There's lots of online training courses that you have to take depending on the facility or the instruments that you're using. You can take a minimum of 3. Sometimes it can go up to 6. There are some instruments that require medical surveillance. For example, if you're using any of our laser systems here, you are required to get an eye exam and be approved by our medical department. By the way, we will reimburse you for the cost of your eye exam. Our user office will. Our training modules are available online. They're all online courses, so we recommend that you take them before you come to Brookhaven so you don't waste your time doing these training courses before you can get into the labs. And the very last thing is the CFN Operation Safety Awareness training that is done once you come here on your first visit. It actually gives you an orientation on the lab, on the tools, and you don't get badge access or what we call access to the labs until you've completed that. Okay? So how do you get into the labs once you've done all of that? All access to the labs are controlled by the badge. And we don't give you access on your badges until all of those parameters are met. So your proposals have to be active or valid. Your online training is up to date, you've completed your COSA training, and your safety approval form is approved. There is no piggybacking. By that we mean if two of you are working in the labs, one can go in and the other isn't, you can't open the door for that person to come in. You have to come to the user office so that we can update your badge access or tell you why you've lost your access to the lab.